Alright everyone, you have a new warfare tactic being used by the Ukrainians actually at the moment. It's something that I've warned of, and what's happening right now is not nearly as disastrous as what could happen. Thermite drones. I warned of thermite drones some time ago. They're called dragon drones. The idea is, of course, you're basically dumping fireballs on your enemy. You can also burn up a small forest in this capacity. If you were to put them across an enemy's border, you could cause catastrophic damage. You could cause firestorms. Here's what I've warned of. And unfortunately, I get the feeling that it's going to happen at some time. We now have technology with relation to drones where they can be flown in formation. What if you were to take a formation of drones that was specifically and decidedly arranged to go onto the deck of a ship and drop thermite charges, I mean, sticky charges, or however you're going to do it? You could flare up the whole deck, burn holes through the hull, turn the ship into Swiss cheese, and for a few tens of thousands of dollars, you can destroy a $100 million vessel. This is what I am completely worried about. I'm worried that this is, I mean, you've got to understand, in the world, there are a few countries that are really good at drone production. Iran is one of them, the United States is one of them, China is one of them, and then there are a few others. Russia has its own drones, although they appear to be leasing drones from Iran mainly, etc., etc. What happens if the Houthis, for example, get a hold of a dozen thermite drones, and they drop them onto the deck of a U.S. ship in the middle of the night? You know, they fly them in under the radar, right at water level, and then the drones arrange themselves on the deck of, say, let's say, an aircraft carrier. And they drop their charges. And the charges burn right through the hull of the ship, and all of a sudden we've lost an aircraft carrier. Well, that's a rather expensive piece of equipment now, isn't it? My worry is that any Tom, Dick, or Harry can make thermite. It's not difficult to make. To be clear, you know, TSA, I've never made thermite myself. But it's not difficult. It's powdered aluminum with powdered rust, basically, iron oxide. And it forms a reaction, and it will burn straight down through pretty much anything. You can destroy the engine block of a goddamn tank with thermite if you want to. The average tank, that is, unless it has, like, reactive armor or something like that. You could end up with a situation where a relatively lowly funded non-state actor, Houthi rebels, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, etc., manages to sink a goddamn aircraft carrier. The Ukrainians are showing us that this is already feasible. Imagine what would happen, link in the description, archived of course. Imagine what would happen if a couple of those drones decided to douse a ship at sea, a frigate or whatever, you know, close to shore. It would be catastrophic. I mean, nobody's going to be able to go up on deck, nobody's going to be able to put it out, and it'll probably burn through the hull. Thermite is no joke. There's a reason it's used in industrial applications. Thermite can be used to literally sear apart the structural integrity of a building very, very cheaply. It's not even expensive. This is something that any kid that studied, like, you know, college prep chemistry could probably prepare a batch of thermite. Now, nanothermite, of course, you need a little bit more refining process, but they can. What happens when some crazy kid decides, hey, you know what? I can burn down my friend's house real easy right now because I've got a drone and I can mix up thermite. No, I'll make a sticky charge or something like that. It's not difficult to do. This is fairly elementary. That's the whole problem. The problem is never the problem that you're seeing now. It's always the evolution of the problem. I use this in the terms of, for instance, viruses and bacteria. The virus you're dealing with right now is not the problem. It's if it mutates and it becomes more virulent or something like that, more transmissible, then you've got a problem. You think the problems that you got now are large fry. No. You've got the extra small fry from the kids' meal. Since we have this technology, drones are now ubiquitous within warfare, and since thermite is inexpensive, And since it's so intrinsic in destroying vehicles, I can only imagine what would happen if this was applied to, let's say, attacking a naval group. You may not get them all. Yeah, you downed a couple of those drones, but the other ones are turning your hull into a block of Swiss cheese. Just filling it full of holes. Well, eventually it's going to sink. Well, that's going to be a little bit of a problem now, since that ship cost, $500 million or something like that. The drones that were flown in and the Thermite cost, I don't know, a couple of tens of thousands at most. This is possible with current technology. Just imagine the technology that comes later. Drones necessarily will become more efficient. They necessarily will become more stealthy. They necessarily will carry larger payloads. And they necessarily will proliferate and be more common on the battlefield. This is a grave threat to the U.S. Navy especially. Not necessarily to general armed forces, dudes wandering around. You're not going to waste Thermite gassing them out. Although the Ukrainians appear to be doing so, which is probably not the wisest decision in the world. But you can cause catastrophic damage to an enemy with a handful of drones that cost relatively little money. They cost relatively little to operate. They're capable of carrying a payload that is significant enough to actually be of use. If you strafe down a bunch of vehicles with Thermite charges, they're going to burn up. Even rioters do this. You've seen probably that famous video from Ukraine, actually. That was during the Maidan period, I believe, where there was an APC and people were throwing Molotov cocktails at it. And eventually the whole vehicle was completely in flames and stopped working. That's not even Thermite, that's just Molotov cocktails. Thermite is no joke. So this is something, we've probably opened a can of worms in the military sense that we probably shouldn't have opened. Was it inevitable? Yes. It's just like drones originally in warfare. It was sort of like aircraft. Aircraft originally, like before the World War I period, generally they were only used for recon. They were used for observing the battlefield and relaying messages. They were never really armed. Once they began being fired upon, they said, well, we need a methodology by which we can defend these planes. And so they start putting machine guns on them and arming the people with dynamite. The same is true of drones. Drones originally were just a niche sort of thing. Hey, I can take a picture of this forest. Hey, I can take a picture of the battlefield, etc. Now they're beginning to arm them more and more and more. Germans have flamethrower drones that they use to burn piles of brush off of electrical lines with, actually. Yeah, I wonder what that could do to a person. Drone comes down in your face and blasts you with a fireball. That's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Warfare is changing, but war never changes. That's about all. Peace out.